Hi, everybody. One of the questions that I get asked most whenever I post a time-lapse video of one of my power animals to either YouTube or to Facebook is, can you please slow down the videos so that I can see more clearly what it is that you're doing? So I thought I would take this opportunity to share with you one of my more popular paintings of Lion Spirit and slow him down for you so that you can see a bit better and have a clearer understanding of what it was that I was doing at the time I painted him. I used an 18 by 24 sheet of 140-pound weight aquarelle watercolor paper and a large round sable brush that holds a lot of water, and Van Gogh watercolors in the tube form is what I'm currently using here that I have put onto my palette. And I work wet on wet, so I lay the water down onto the paper first, and then I put my color on just so that it spreads a little bit more organically and so that the line isn't so terribly harsh. And here I'm just trying to find my laying blocks of colors so that I can keep track of where the mane is, where the face is, the eyes, so that when I come back with heavier color later, I won't lose sight of that. Right here for the eyes, very briefly, I am using watercolor crayons, as you can see down there on the left-hand side, and they are made by Staedtler, I believe. It's Staedtler. And here I have switched again from that to something that's called Inktense blocks by Derwent. And they come in the sticks that you see there. You just pull them out. I have a set of 12. And I take my paintbrush filled with water and I rub it onto the stick, and then I deliver that color directly to the paper. And as you can see, it delivers a punch of color. It acts like watercolor, but in a more concentrated form, and the colors are brilliant. I really like working with the Inktense blocks by Derwent. They're very, very good for delivering different types of color. They almost remind me of working with like a wet crayon. And you can actually use them like that. You could just dip the tip of the stick in water and deliver that color right to paper if you wanted to, and it would give you a lot of bold color. But then I would come back probably and use a watercolor brush, paintbrush on top of that, just to soften out, because you'll get a lot of color. It's a very intense type of stick. So here I'm going back in and just trying to get that eye to where I can identify more with that animal. Usually when I get my first layer of color down, I start working on the eye so that I can familiarize myself with the animal that I am working on. And here, it's been a while since I finished this painting, obviously, but I remember as I'm looking through this now that I was having such a difficult time knowing where the face ended and the mane began. So I kept coming back and trying not to let that mane creep too much into the facial area, and I remember having to adjust that over and over again. And once you lay down watercolor, it's very difficult to go back with watercolor and correct something. So I'll show you here in a little bit what I did to actually correct some of the mistakes that I made with the color that I laid down. So for the mane, I had decided early on when I started this painting that I wanted the mane to be wild, very, almost like a headdress, but I wanted it to be whimsical and just fun and so, so colorful. So I kept laying down different types of color, and the more color I laid down, the more color I wanted on it. and it really started working out well once I started adding acrylic paint over top of the dried watercolor. And as you can see, just adding that white, adding that red on top of there just really brings out the look of that mane. Already it's looking more and more brilliant and just beautiful. Acrylic paint over top of watercolor, I do that very often. That is mainly how I correct the mistakes that I make when I lay down watercolor, and I can't really erase that. So I will lay down acrylic paint, white acrylic paint, or gesso. Sometimes I'll lay down gesso over top as well to correct mistakes that I've made. And actually from here on out, through the remainder of the painting, all I use is acrylic paint. So really, I guess the undercolor, my base layer, really was watercolor, but you really, once the painting is finished, you really couldn't see, you really couldn't tell that I had used watercolor much at all, except for the bits and pieces in the face that I did not cover in acrylic paint. So here I'm just trying to get those highlights and lowlights for the face to make the face look a bit more three-dimensional, and just add lots of colors that I thought would go well next to each other, fuchsias and yellows, using blues and purples and greens, and just whatever I could find that I had in my paint stash that I thought would go is really what I used. It was sort of a no-holds-barred type of thing. I just went for it. For whatever color I had, I thought, well, what can it hurt? If it doesn't turn out, then I'll cover it over in white paint, try something else. So here I'm sort of tightening up the facial features and continuing on that eye, and I really wanted the viewer to look at the face of this lion and wonder what it was he was staring so intently at. So I wanted the facial expression to be very serious, and I wanted him to look like he was really contemplating something off in the distance, and then giving that mane just a wild, very whimsical look, sort of to balance that the whole painting out. And I think it was last minute on this painting that I had decided that I wanted to add some decoration to the mane. So as you'll see here in just a moment, I decided to use the back of various paint brushes and just dip them into acrylic paint, and then I created dots in different sizes on the mane, just to make it look a bit more fun and sort of to give it a headdress effect, and I feel that I achieved that really pretty well. So that should be coming up here in just a moment, where you'll see a bunch of squiggly lines, things like that. Here I'm using sort of my signature splatter effect that I do on all of my paintings, and I'm using a toothbrush that I have dipped in paint and then splattered onto the white background. And here you can see all of my dots that I've done in various colors, and the dots are just different sized paintbrush, the backs of them, the opposite end of the paintbrush, and just adding those dots, and that's really pretty much it. The painting turned out, I think it's one of my favorite paintings that I've ever done, in part because of its massive size. It really commands attention, and I really, really love this painting. And the colors too. The face turned out better than I could have expected. So I hope you enjoyed this slowed down version of my time lapse, and if you have any questions, you know where to find me. Thanks, everybody, and I'll see you next time.